Hello, everyone. Welcome to Marvelous Movie Mondays with Kelsey and Dill. Those are our names in Japanese. We're really embracing the theme today. We're back to our first Avenger Files, where we're going back into the depths of Marvel history and looking at some of the early 70s and 80s projects that people have seemingly forgot about. This one, I don't think the culture has forgotten about or will ever forget about, which is the Japanese Spider-Man. But before we get into that, Kelsey, how are you? How are you doing? Welcome. Happy Monday. We haven't actually addressed the channel in a while because last week was our title match, and then the week before we took off because of the Pickle Awards, which we were both involved in, so it technically counted. So it's been 2, 3 weeks. So how's it going?
Well, Dill, long time no see, and I
I
mean
know.
that literally, you know?
Right.
First of all, so good to see you again. Good to be back
Nice to meet you.
podcasting with you. Nice to meet
good.
you.
Good to see you.
Um, honestly, I'm coming off of St. Patty's Day weekend, so I'm definitely feeling it. I'm feeling a
Yeah.
little tired. I also
Mm,
had to, on top of doing St. Patrick's Day weekend the best that I could, I was working all weekend as well. So I am
mm,
just absolutely needing some very deep, deep sleep. But I'm
yeah.
happy to be here talking about the 1978 Japanese version of Spider Man.
Yes. Yeah, it's very interesting because like St. Patrick's Day is a great holiday because the hangover smoothie the next day is still green, so it's still on par with the theme. So like I feel like if I'm
Exactly.
like refreshing my body and cleansing it, then at least I'm doing it on theme in the green theme. I'm not
Exactly.
I'm not very Irish, but I freaking love St. Patrick's Day. I love the idea of just like wearing green and drinking Guinness and eating cabbage and all that stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
But I spent the weekend, with my cast, at a show, but also like backstage in the dressing room, I was playing some Irish jig music, and we were all jigging, and it was so much fun.
Nice.
It's a good time, and I made sure to get my Guinness on the way home. Not driving while drinking. I went to the bar, then I drove. And I only had one Guinness, so it was all legal. I probably shouldn't be saying all this, but Kelsey, how did you celebrate your St. Patrick's Day? Anything fun?
Well, I went down to Stone Street in
Mm,
New York City here. It's a famous
yeah, of
cobblestone
course.
road that's lined with some great bars and pubs
Sweet.
and things. Met some Irish lads. Things
Mm.
got crazy.
Oh,
Uh the Irishmen, they know how to party, you know?
yeah. Well, I at my restaurant that I work at, we house they bring in Irish people every summer to work as part of the J1 visas to work at the restaurant and like kind of just get experience in living in New York and stuff like that.
Mm.
So we kind of like take them in and we go to all the nightlife with them, but then we realize we're all stood up by them because they are all amazing at like
Yeah.
partying and drinking and
Yeah.
it's amazing. You can't keep up, but I tried to.
Yeah.
So any J1s listening out there, thank you. Um, but no, I love them all and I miss them all, and we get new ones every year. But it's always like you always have fondness for each different class. No class is
For
above the
sure.
others. What's up with you though in terms of movie stuff? What was the best thing you watched this week, or what have you watched the past few weeks? I know we were in the midst of pickle season and Oscar season, and now that's finally over. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't have much Marvel news, but some news. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. finally won his Oscar, which is really cool.
Yep.
He's
Yep.
only
Yep.
the only Marvel actor, and then Emma Stone from Amazing Spider-Man also won her second Oscar. But
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. won his first Oscar, which was cool for Marvel fans. Spider-Verse lost a boy in the heron though, which I guess is appropriate for
Mm.
today's episode considering Japan's taken over here too. But I was
Yeah.
very happy to see just the popular pick not necessarily win, even though I love Spider-Verse. It was a cool shakeup, a cool twist to
Yeah.
the Oscars. But how are you feeling in terms of movie stuff? What have you been watching?
Well, Dill, I was trying my best to see all 10 of the Best Picture nominees from this year. Still
Mhm.
haven't seen Oppenheimer. But apparently I hear it's good. So maybe I should get around to
it's,
that.
it's it's a little
Um
underrated gem, I would say. No, we're
Well,
watching that
deep
together
cut.
though.
I know
Yeah,
not
yeah.
many people have heard of it, but I've been trying to get around to seeing it.
Hmm.
But two films that I did watch before Oscars were The Holdovers. I watched in my apartment, which was very good, very very charming and hilarious. And then I got to see in theaters American Fiction,
Mm,
which was so good.
yeah.
So good. I gave it a 4.5 on Letterbox. It was
Ooh,
damn
wow.
near going to get a 5. I only docked it half a star just because I didn't love the ending.
Right. Or the
Um,
endings. Yeah.
exactly. Like I don't know. I don't like how they were trying to like I don't know. It just got
Yeah.
messy for me. I would have preferred if it ended. I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but so we can talk about it not on air. Um,
Join
but
us in the comments section on Picture This. We'll be talking all about it. So,
that
um,
was, absolutely the best thing that I've watched in a minute was American Fiction. It was just so heartfelt and hilarious, and I'm so glad it won for adapted screenplay because the writing was so, so
yeah.
great. Um, and the performances were great. Oh my god, I fell in love with the old couple that falls in love.
Yo,
What's her
I
name?
literally tweeted. Okay, so I tweeted the other day, and because
Yeah,
everyone's been talking about Jeffrey Wright and Sterling K. Brown, deservingly, they are both
yeah,
great. But
yeah.
I said, and here's my tweet verbatim. Let me find it first. There it is. Okay, I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but my favorite performance in American Fiction has got to be Lucretia Taylor. Her performance just warms my heart. That's the older woman who's like the
Yeah, yeah,
housekeeper
yeah,
who falls
yeah,
in love with
yeah.
Maynard, the mailman. Listen, or is
Yes,
he a
yes.
policeman or a mailman? I can't remember, but um, he like comes by the house, so I thought he was like a mailman, but maybe I'm
He
thinking
I
maybe he
I
might
think
be more
he's
of a
like some kind of like not necessarily a policeman, but some
like a
kind of
sheriff.
like security, like
Yeah,
maybe like, town watch kind of person,
yeah,
something
she's
like
my
that.
favorite performance in that movie, though. I love her.
Yeah.
She's so good. And, like,
Oh,
that couple is so sweet. Yes, I should honestly, in retrospect, it was one of those things where after I made the pickle nominations, I went, "Ooh, wait, I should have nominated them for best couple," because I was thinking of it throughout the year, and then I just forgot
mm,
by the time I was putting my list together. That's why this year I'm starting to like write down pickle nominations as I see the movies. So at the end of the
yeah,
year, I can go back and be like, "Oh yeah," because that
nice.
was one that I just forgot about. Because when you think of that movie, that's not necessarily what comes to mind first. But I was like, no, it should have been. And so they probably would have been in place of like I hate to say it, but Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney.
Hey, that's
Hey,
super fair.
that's fair, but they still get the best kiss though, nomination. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like American Fiction a lot. We'll talk about it on Picture This, me and Chad, in depth. So any thoughts you want to hear about me, an American Fiction audience, you'll have to wait for that. The best thing I watched this week though was Dune Part Two. It's the only thing I watched this week because I was so busy with my show that I only had one day to go see it. But I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't think it's as good as the first part. I think a lot of people think it's better than the first part. I just need more time to watch it again, probably to get there. On my first watch, I like the first part better, but I still think it's a great movie, and I think it was well
Mm,
done. And Austin Butler is really great in it. He's scary and just this awful psychopathic character who just watching like Ned's Declassified and Zoe 101 growing up to see Austin Butler now being like this like villain of this sci-fi film and like just nailing it and playing Elvis. I'm like, what a career. So it's really fun to see his career. And I think Timothée Chalamet steps it up this time. I thought there were aspects that were better. Like the design was much better, but the story itself, I think, is a little bit more all over the place, whereas the first one was a little more streamlined. But I really like it. And the review will be coming on this channel soon. It's just I haven't had time to actually write it and review it and film it. But Doom Part 2, I do recommend. It's one of those things where if you're going to see Doom Part 2 ever, see it on the big screen. You might as well because that's the
yeah,
way to see it.
yeah.
So, have you seen the first Dune, Kels?
I just watched that this past week, actually, Dune
Gotcha.
Part 1.
Were you a
So
fan or no?
I no, I liked it. I
Okay,
actually liked it a lot.
cool.
Um, yeah, I tried to watch it one other time before, like when it first like came to streaming services, and but I was violently
I
hungover,
remember
so I
that.
was
I
just
remember
like
that.
I was a shell of a human
I
being, just like
remember that
not.
very well.
I wasn't
Mhm.
taking in any information, so I was just like, why do I care about any of this? But then I
Yeah.
watched it again and I was like, huh, when you pay attention to this movie, it's actually really good.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, if you put the subtitles on, it helps. I don't know if you did or not. You probably
No,
didn't,
yeah.
but
My roommates are subtitle people,
okay.
so I have to,
But
like, succumb to
I'll
watching
tell you right
everything with
now,
subtitles.
I rewatched Dune Part 1 for Dune Part 2, and I on my rewatch, I watched it with my mom, and we had subtitles on. She was immediately just, like, in love with it, and I was like, "That's awesome," because so many people I know are, like, very kinda at a distance from the first one, but she said, "It's honestly because I could keep up with everything because I could read everything with the subtitles," and I'm like, "It's true, with all these
Yeah,
names, like Arrakis and Harkonnens and the Fremen and all these things, like, having the
yeah,
subtitles
yeah,
really
yeah.
helps." To where like I think a lot of the people who were like the first this one was just a little confusing and a little like it's really not if you see the names laid out for you. That's why the book is so successful. So I really that's one of those things where if I have to champion subtitles, I'm like watch Dune, watch Lord of the Rings, because like once you see the names of
Yeah.
these things, I think it sticks better.
Yeah.
Because if you really know the ins and outs of this world, part two is going to be even better because it does get even more convoluted of a story. But if you know everyone and where they stand and what religious places they're at and stuff,
Mhm.
that's important. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing when you see it, so you can let me know what you thought.
Yeah. I've
Cool.
only heard good things about it, so
Yeah,
I'm
it's great.
excited.
All right, so let's talk about Japanese Spider-Man. This is part of our first Avenger Files, which is where we go back into like the crux of Marvel history. And the next on our list chronologically, we covered the original Incredible Hulk pilots that were films. We covered the original Spider-Man film TV pilot, and then or it was like a backdoor pilot the TV movie, and now this is the Japanese Spider-Man, which we for this purposes we're covering episode 0, which was released in theaters at a film festival, so it's technically a short film, even though it became the first episode of a series, kind of like all of these
Mm.
have. Like we see a
Mhm.
pattern where like this is kind of like a backdoor pilot for a series that actually was fairly successful in Japan. It lasted a little while. But Kelsey, what are your like initial thoughts on this? Because this is something that I'm sure you had no kind of previous knowledge of. I'm sure I know a lot of people
Yeah,
on
no.
this side of the ocean don't necessarily know. I knew about it because of an honest trailer that came out a few years ago, which I also sent you, which is
Mm.
just hilarious.
Yes,
But
I did
I
watch that.
saw that and I was like, wait, this exists, and then I sought it out. But yeah, this aired for almost a whole year, which is pretty impressive. 41 episodes, which is like any show getting 41 episodes is amazing.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on Japanese Spider-Man, Kels? Or
Well,
Spider-Man?
so the the word that comes to mind first and foremost is definitely interpretation. I'm like, this was certainly a very, very creative and interesting interpretation of the character of Spider-Man.
Mhm.
Obviously, he does everything that we know Spider-Man to do, like climb on walls and shoot webs, or in this case, spider strings. Um, and things like that.
Oh,
But he also has some gadgets with him. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, is there an iron spider suit? Does he have a little like mini spider that shoots off of his suit and like can fly around? No, he is like full on like cars and robots and technology that our other Spider-Men have not had before.
yeah.
Um so it's yeah, it was a lots of sound effects, lots of interesting shots, lots of like replaying of shots over and over again and then reversing the shot and then seeing the shot again. Lots and lots of climbing. If there's one thing this Spider-Man does, it's climb. He's the climber.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, it was just it was a lot to take in. I mean, I was entertained to say the
Yeah,
least,
and it's
for sure.
short. I mean, like, you all should go watch it
Yeah.
now. I mean, you're 13 minutes into our podcast, which means, like, in 20 minutes, we'll still be talking, but, like, you can go watch this in 20 minutes and come back. It's short. But, yeah, it's something you have to, like, just kind of separate the critical angle of and be like, "I'm just gonna take it in for what it is," because it is such a
Yeah.
unique anomaly. But I really do appreciate first off, I appreciate the stunt work because it is really impressive at the 70s. The fact that he is like climbing and there's very little harnesses here to be had. And it's not like the
Yeah.
olden days where you can just like erase things with CGI. Like, no, like he's actually like hanging off of shit and climbing shit, which is also why I think they have a lot more freedom to like go crazier in Japan because the permits are less strict. But like
Yeah.
I thought there was a freshness and originality to it. It almost reminded me of Power Rangers. I don't know if you grew up watching Power Rangers. I don't know how much Power Rangers you watch, Kels,
They
at
Yeah, they
all.
said that in the Honest trailer. They made
Yeah.
the comparison between the
Yeah,
2.
but it's
So
very
I do
similar,
know what you're referencing.
especially with like the gadgets and stuff. It's like it's almost as if you didn't need to put the Spider-Man suit on him, and he's just like this kind of like secret agent, like kind of martial arts master who has these guns and gadgets. It's just, oh, we're
Yeah.
also going to attach the IP by putting the costume on him, which in Japan wasn't a big like the IP wasn't the selling point. It was just we have this like cool character we can use because they don't use any of the other IP, and you brought that up first and foremost. It's a very loose interpretation. But I think it's very interesting that nowadays we see Sony being able to use everything but Spider-Man, but here they use Spider-Man and nothing else. It's like the opposite. It's like there's no
Yeah,
Daily Bugle, there's no
the literal
because obviously
inverse.
it's taking place in Japan, but it's like there's no other characters that we know. There's no other villains that are Spider-Man villains. These are
Yeah.
completely original villains, like the
Yeah.
what is it called? I don't even know. The swordfish thing that shoots
The
torpedoes
Sea
out of its
Devil?
mouth. Yeah, the Sea Devil. Like
Yeah.
all these are original characters, or at least not like staple characters. Like there's no Green Goblin, no Doc Ock. But I think that's kind of fun because it's like it can exist in its own little like multiverse, its own little world. It doesn't have to try to compare. And you don't
Yeah.
have to compare it. Like there's no origin story about him getting bit. He's just kind of there already from the start, which I thought
Yeah.
was funny. Yeah.
Honestly, Jill, it's kinda like his own little what if season. Like, it's like, what if Spider-Man fought a swordfish that vomits
Mhm.
torpedoes? What happens? Let's find out.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let's start with the top of the episode because I do want to talk about this theme song that we get.
Yes.
Um, we start off with the theme song to open our episode, and I did write down the lyrics and I want to break them down together. It goes between the dark valleys of buildings. I sparkle with a flash of anger, giving up peace, giving up everything, chasing evil through the skies. Why do you choose to fight, risking your own life with only one goal, the invincible man, Spider-Man.
It's pretty epic.
That's I mean, that's all you need to know, honestly, right off the bat. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, maybe the translation is like not super like maybe some things are like getting misinterpreted. Who knows?
Mhm.
But I was just like, wow, I need to write down these lyrics because this is incredible. So
Yeah.
our episode starts with oh, I'm sorry. What were you
No,
gonna
I'm
say?
just saying, yeah, like it's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So our episode starts with Spider-Man seemingly trapped in a room. He's crawling around to all these different windows. He's trying to figure out how to get out of this room. And then a voice echoes above him. Oh, Spider-Man, it seems you've fallen right into my trap. And then he wakes up. It was only a dream. Thank God.
I love the way the
But
camera kinda just, like, cuts, like, when he's falling, it
yeah.
just cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts, like because they can't
Yes.
actually have a
Yes.
sustained falling shot. There's a lot of that in this episode or this movie, but there's
Yeah.
it's quite chaotic. Don't ever watch this at, like, 1.5 or 2 speed, you will go dizzy.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but then his sister and brother, I'm assuming, are in
Mhm,
danger. He gets his spidey tingles, or maybe he
mhm.
hears them. I don't know. And he goes and he saves the day. But when he gets back home, they're gone again. He's like, brother, sister, where could you be? But he gets a phone call and he says, and the guy in the line says, he calls him by his real name and he's like, I have your brother and sister. They're at this hotel. He also says, I have your girlfriend too. So he has his girlfriend, he has his siblings, and they're at this hotel. And he also knows who he is. Like, we already have someone who knows Spider-Man's identity. Like, that's
Mm,
the whole plot point in some of our movies. And it's like, no, right off the bat, he's been discovered. I'm
yeah.
like, okay, this is all happening. A lot's happening. I'm getting whiplash already.
Right, which makes me feel like this was just an intention of, like, making a story about a martial artist, and then because the whole reason they signed this agreement, it was a 3-year deal between Stan Lee and, the Japanese, what is his name? Publisher Gene Pelk visited Japan on behalf of Marvel, to try to get Marvel to be more global, 'cause, back then, internationally, Marvel wasn't, like, a thing. They were trying to reach out and try to make Marvel a bigger name overseas, so they basically pitched this idea of, "You can use our character and like if people
Mm,
really like this character, then they'll check out the stuff. They'll buy the comics from America." Um,
mm,
so my whole thinking is that whoever made this really just wanted to make this martial arts film about this guy,
yeah.
and then they had to put the suit on him. So I think the whole like knowing his identity thing is because they didn't really care about the whole Spider-Man of it all. It was mostly the image that they really cared about. They didn't care about the story and the fact that he wears a mask.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so funny because like that is the main draw of the American one. So much so that they literally redid the ending of No Way Home to make it so that we end with him still being anonymous, because they were like, we can't have him be known. So they had to like backtrack
Right.
and literally reset the timeline
Right.
so much so. So I think that's so interesting that this one, the Japanese government's like, nah, we don't care. Like he's whoever he is. The spider suit is almost just like his armor. It's not really an identity thing, which also makes it so much different than any other superhero, anything, X-Men, Spider-Man, what have you.
So we get to the hotel, and the man reveals himself to be in Interpol. He's a part of the Interpol Intelligence Department, which is an organization that is trying to stop this, evil gang called the Iron Cross Army. And basically, he's saying, "I need your help." He needs Spider-Man's help. And he's like, "Don't worry, your family's fine. They're at they're here at the hotel, but they're just splish splashing in the pool. Like you're fine." Um, and so, we also find out that this guy was a part of the attack on his sister at the beginning of the movie. Like
Mm,
he was the reason why they got attacked in the first
right.
place. And he's like, "Okay, so let me break down what's happening. There's a sea monster out there that's vomiting torpedoes, and he's been destroying all of these ships that are bringing oil over from the Middle East, and I need you to stop this from happening." And so, but then Spider-Man gets his little Spidey sense, and he opens up his watch. He has a little gadget. He reminded me a lot of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, if any of them,
Mm,
because he just like had so many like gadgets and things.
right.
I'm like,
It's
this
less
is something that
practical.
like
Yeah.
Tony Stark would have given him. Like
Hmm.
he has the Edith glasses, and
Yeah.
then he's like,
Hey,
you
this is
know,
ahead of its time.
exactly. So he's like, "Oh, the Iron Cross Army are here, and it's a woman, and she's in this fancy outfit. She has this fancy hat, and she's, traipsing around the hotel trying to find information." Meanwhile, Spider-Man has to fight all these other guys that they have like beaks on their faces. Do you notice this still? They're
Yeah.
like masks have like beaks. Anyway, it was a very thing design. Like there
Mhm.
wasn't like there was
No
thought
consistency.
in detail to like every element that was showcased to us.
But no cohesion between the elements. When you heard about this sea monster, were you expecting that?
No.
I was
No.
expecting a sea monster, but it was like this guy with a big old
He was
face, like
like it was like a hybrid between a shark and like uh
swordfish,
a swordfish
but
with
like
like a
almost like
bunch
a
of
dolphin.
teeth. Yeah, almost like a dolphin too, and he was like waddling around, and then it's like he's not, and he's like a creature, right? So where does he get it in him to like vomit out these torpedoes? Like does he make them? Does he like he has a mechanism in his body
I
that's just
think
making torpedoes all day, and then he just goes, "Oh," and then he like
I think with a
shoots
bigger
one
budget, it
out?
would have been an actual sea monster, but I think they had to settle for, we'll just put a guy in a mask and call him this torpedo shooting sea That's the charm, though. That's the charm of it all. I love it.
Yeah. So this is what I wrote down during this action sequence at the hotel, was that there's a lot of shots of him climbing. Like a lot of his fighting technique was him just like jumping up on a wall and then like
And then
spinning around a
kicking,
few
yeah.
times.
And then like
And then
kick,
I
kick,
felt like
yeah.
yeah, like his tactic was, okay, if I freak him out with the fact that I can climb on walls, maybe it'll distract them long enough that I can just like like
and every
slap
time
one across the face.
And every time he gets on the wall, he like mounts. He like it like freezes and zooms very quickly. It's like he
Yeah.
freezes, dun 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 dun, and then he goes. Like it's
Yes,
so funny.
yes.
It's
Like
great
it was they wanted the audience to know so bad. They were like, look at this. Look how crazy he is climbing on
yeah,
these walls." And I'm like,
because
"Yeah,
that's the marvel of it all. That's like if you can't sell the costume, I mean that's the other thing is like he climbs wall. Like you have to
right."
establish that. Like he's not like the other guys.
So then we finally get some shots of him swinging. He's like up in trees at a certain point, and he's like swinging, but of course it's like the loop of the same shot over and over again of him like up in the air. It was, yeah, there's a lot of repetition in this episode. And then while Spider-Man is fighting off all these guys, the woman, I'm assuming, like throws a smoke grenade into the Interpol guy's room. He's like, "Oh
Mhm.
god, I got to get out of here." He goes to take an elevator, falls down the elevator shaft. He's just fallen fucking
and
50 feet down.
survived. I could not
He
believe it.
Well, he did land on a net. They
Oh,
did take
yeah. Okay.
No, I know. You probably would not
I would have died.
survive that. I think that if
Yeah.
you I yeah, no, I don't wanna get into the semantics because it's kind of gross. So, they kidnap Interpol Man, and then I guess we meet, what the leader of the Iron Cross Army, which is a man they refer to in the English translation as Professor Monster, which again could be a very bad translation of what it actually means in Japanese, but that's what the subtitles told me, is that his name was Professor Monster. And we find out the woman's name too, and her name is Amazonis. Amazonis. Like a female Amazon or something. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Not name is yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazonian, Amazonis. So their whole plan now is to basically torture Spider-Man's true identity out of the Interpol man. And so they bring him onto this giant ship and they want to lure Spider-Man to the ship to save this guy. And she's like, he's going to be coming through the water. I just know it. So then they just start shooting at the water, hoping that they're going to get him, I guess. And so none of their torture methods are working. He's staying airtight. Mr. Interpol man is a very loyal hoe
Mhm.
and he's not giving up any information. So Amazonis says, "All right, bring in the Sea Devil," which is what they refer to him as in the translation. And she instructs him to vomit a torpedo at the industrial complex, which I guess is important. And he's like, "No, don't do it." Meanwhile, Spider-Man is finally swimming, making his way it through the ocean to get to this ship, which made me think, Dill, I don't think I've ever seen any of the Spider-Man in any interpretation in any of the movies swim.
Have you seen any Marvel superheroes swim?
Oh, good question.
No,
Good
I
question.
don't think any of them have. Because honestly, so many of the Marvel ones nowadays, the MCU ones have metallic stuff that would like short circuit if they went into the water. I mean, I guess
Right.
Namor is and Black Panther is the closest we've gotten to that. But like Aquaman is the
Yeah.
only superhero across anything, DC or Marvel. And we don't cover DC. We never
I
will.
guess Well, yeah, I guess. Well, also Black Panther Wakanda Forever is like the only one that like takes place in like water.
Right.
Like I feel like none of the other movies do. They're all land based
Yeah. I
because
feel
I
like
guess all of our
I
heroes
feel
are
like Hulk
land
has got a
based.
good breaststroke, you know? Like I feel like
Oh, he
Hulk is
can
probably a good swimmer. Yeah, yeah.
rip through
I feel
those
like
oceans.
Thor would swim really well too.
I For some reason, I don't think Thor knows how to swim. He
Mm.
gives like that energy. Like I feel like you'd put Thor on like a boat in the middle of the ocean and he's like strapped on, like he has his life vest on permanently and is like clinging to something. Like
We
I
have
don't think
seen
he likes
Thor
the ocean.
on a boat though. Remember in Love and Thunder, he's like on that pirate ship, right?
Yeah, but that's in space. That's not like in like
Oh,
the
true.
real
Okay. All right.
ocean.
Yeah, you're right.
You
You're
know what
right.
I
You're right.
mean?
Yeah,
Like I
you're
feel
right.
like if we just put him in the middle of the Atlantic, like see what happens.
Right.
Put
Yeah.
put Thor on the Jersey Shore. I want to know what happens. But anyway, but the reason why I found this so jarring was because I was immediately thinking, I'm like, it's probably really hard to swim. It's already hard to breathe while you're swimming anyway. But now he's got a mask on. I'm like, this guy's gonna drown.
Yeah, no,
It made me
the
nervous.
physics don't make sense on that. Not at all.
Okay, but then we see Spider-Man up in a plane in the sky, and he jumps off of the plane, and he has a parachute on him, and he lands on the boat, but then it turns out to just be a dummy, so it was like a decoy. It was a
Mhm.
distraction so that the real Spider-Man, who's Michael
Swimming.
Phelpsing it in the
Mhm.
ocean, can climb up the side of the boat. And so he finally gets on the boat, and he's doing really, really well until he steps on what I think is like a sensor, and then he exposes himself, and they're all like, "Spider-Man's here." And then he has to fight for his life on this boat. We get another action sequence, but during this action sequence, still, we get the theme song during it. It was playing in the background, which
Nice
I
bop.
loved. I
Yeah.
loved. I was like, this is so charming. This is what, comic book movie should be. Playing the theme song during the
Take note.
okay, last epic battle is what I try to
Yeah.
say. Even though it's
Yeah.
not. We still have another battle coming up. And don't
Oh,
think I forgot
just
about
you
that
wait.
one. And so basically he just crawls around a lot. There's this one part during the fight where he like gets into the room where the Interpol guy and the woman are. And they just like he like, superhero lands, Spider-Man lands in the room, and they literally have they replay that shot, I think like 5 times of him just landing in the room. It was just like very stylistic. Like it was like art. It was
Yeah.
kind of art. I'm not gonna lie. At this point, I'm sold as to whatever's
Yeah,
happening
at
in
this
this
point,
episode.
Kelsey's
Like
on board for all
I'm
41
I'm in
episodes.
it.
She's got them
I'm in it.
downloaded off of iTunes, yeah.
I might watch them. I'm not gonna lie. And so he saves the Interpol guy, and they, ride off on a boat into the sunset together. But the Amazoness is like, no, we can't let them get away. Which is when now she sends a helicopter after them to start shooting at them. But I'm like, they're on a boat. Why not utilize the Sea Devil
Mhm.
torpedo man to just send a torpedo after them? It seemed like, I don't know, we didn't need to involve this helicopter.
Yeah.
So now he tells the Interpol guy to run away. The helicopter's going after Spider Man. He's dodging all of the bullets. And then he finally figures out a way that he can actually like hang off of the helicopter. And so this is when we hear one of his many catchphrases, I'm assuming is one of his many catchphrases, which is spider strings. And he does his webs and he like latches onto the guy hanging out of the helicopter shooting at him, throws him right into the water, and he's hanging off this helicopter. We're like not really sure what he's trying to accomplish, but then he opens his watch and he says, "The Marveler." He beckons this machine called the Marveler. And so this machine is kind of like a spaceship that houses other things. And so the Sea Devil does actually send torpedoes after them at some point, but the Marveler shoots at them, kills them. But then the Sea Devil has another trick up his sleeve.
Mm.
He grows 20 feet tall. It's very like monster movie. It was giving like Godzilla to me, like King
Mhm.
Kong.
Yeah.
He's just this giant swordfish, dolphin, shark guy. And Spider-Man is still hanging on for dear life in this helicopter, and he's like, "Okay, now I need my little race car. Give me my little race car, please." And so then his flying race car comes, saves him from the helicopter, brings him to the Marveler. And so now he's inside the Marveler, and the Marveler transforms into a giant robot. To which I wrote in my notes, "What in the Transformers?" And so
Yep.
now this giant robot, if you told me at the beginning of this episode that it was going to end with a giant swordfish dolphin man fighting a giant robot, wouldn't have believed you.
Mm.
Wouldn't have believed
I
you.
should have
I would have
told you.
said, "What drugs did you do?" Because I'm that's not the show I'm watching at all.
Okay.
It was.
Hmm.
And so now Spider-Man is inside this giant robot. He's kind of giving it commands. He's like, "Oh, we need the sword of vigor." And then he throws the sword at the Dolphin Man right into the pie hole, right into his torpedo shooting mouth, and he explodes.
Hmm.
And Spider-Man saves the day. And then we end with a really, really menacing message at the end, which is Spider-Man will not rest. He will only find peace in his death.
Wow.
And that's the setup of our series is that we're just going to have to be battling this Iron Cross army the whole time. And Spider-Man is a transformer, and that's it.
Here you go. 10 out of
That
10.
was I get okay, so
No, I you go ahead. I'm kidding, but yeah.
I've been floating around between like a 5.5 and a 6.5 area,
I'm at a
somewhere
6.
between those two. Maybe I'll land at 6 because that's the one right in the middle of the two
Yeah,
numbers I
'cause
just gave.
yeah. It's its
I
own
was
thing. It's hard to judge.
I
Yeah.
was really on board, Dill. I'm not gonna lie. But once they brought out the robot at the end, and we didn't even get to see Spider-Man really be Spider-Man and, like, use his webs and do everything that he's been doing at the end of the episode, at the during the entire episode. Like, right at the end, it just felt like a little like a cop out to me to incorporate this robot, because it just felt so far from like, we've traveled so far
Right.
from what the original meaning of, like, be what Spider-Man is.
Right.
And that's why I say that this was a really interesting interpretation
Yeah.
of Spider-Man.
Yeah, and the big
Um,
robot stuff is so, like you said, Transformers, very Power Rangers, like, they have that big thing that they
yeah,
all sit in and fight in.
yeah,
It's just the cultural thing, like, I think it's just really, like, that's their style, and that's what I like about it, is that it's very it's not trying to cater to the Western sensibilities, which is also why it was very
right.
short-lived and why it didn't really do much in making Spider-Man very popular in America yet, for the international friends. But now it's an international phenomenon, obviously. You were talking a lot about like translations, which I think is just so funny because I went through the honest trailer and just pulled some of my favorite mistranslations.
Yes.
There's an episode title, and the translation translates to "A School of Love for Children Without Homes." That's just the name of the episode. There's a villain that translates to Machine Bem Toothache Alligator. There he
Yes.
is. There he is right here. Machine Bem Toothache Alligator. You also have um, a bunch of different catchphrases that Spider-Man made. Again, these are all courtesy of Screen Junkies and Honest Trailers. I grabbed these. Um, he tested out a bunch of different like catchphrases, like "I am
Yeah.
this Spider-Man." One is "Man moved by a parent's love," Spider-Man. The other one, "Destroyer of the Mushroom," Spider-Man. This is my favorite. "A man who befriends a wild young girl," Spider-Man. And then the one that they settled on for his catchphrase for the rest of the episodes once they got it, "An emissary from hell," Spider-Man.
Like, so menacing, so dark,
An
and
emissary from hell, like, that is his legacy in
menacing.
Japan is he is the emissary of hell. What? Like when you watch a little sweet little Tom Holland, you're like, "Emissary from hell," there it
E
is. Um,
Emissary from Hell, for
I would
sure.
like to see them
I
go back to
also
that.
really liked how they there was, like, one episode that they put in the Honest trailer that was, like, the ending of an episode that's like, Spider-Man held the little boy's hand and wanted to run away with him. The little boy felt the same way, although they both knew it was wrong, and then the narrator just going, what?" And I was like, "Yeah, what's happening in
Yo,
this? What's
that is my
happening here?"
favorite. The reason I was so excited to do this episode is because that is my favorite honest trailer because it's just like it's a
Yeah.
perfect compilation. If you don't want to sit down and watch the whole series, I feel like you can get the whole series out of that video. Just the different slapping, which becomes like a mainstay on the series where he just walks up and
Yeah.
slaps someone, like just shit like
Yeah.
that, which is just so
Yeah.
random and so all over the place. But it really is so charming. Like I gave it a 6 out of 10 just because like it's not a great thing, but like it's also like its own thing. So like a lot of the times on
Right.
Frame Rec, if there's just something where I like it so bad it's good, but like it's not really bad. It just is what it is. I'll give it like a 6. So yeah, it's a 6 out of 10. It's a 3 star. But like I just yeah, I think it's so fun to watch just once, just to see what it's all about. And that's why we're doing this series, because it's fun to go back. Any last thoughts on Spider-Man 78, 76? Or
If
Japanese
there's
Spider-Man?
one thing that this show did, it's they committed to the bit. Like, there wasn't one
Yeah,
part of the episode, there wasn't one element, like I was saying, like, costume-wise, action-wise, stylistically with the shots and the
right.
cinematography, there wasn't one element that wasn't done 110% of what they were doing, you know?
Right.
It was all very committed. So, it was refreshing to see something that, like, doesn't feel like it was phoned in at all or, like,
Yeah.
half-assed or, like, rushed. You know what I mean? Like, they set out what they were trying to do, and I think they did it. You know what I mean?
They did. So next week, this Wednesday, our Marvel news of the week is that the X-Men '97 series starts this week on Wednesday. But shamefully, because we were born right after that series ended. We never watched the original animated series growing up, like so many of our listeners have. So we thought, why would we jump into this brand new series if it's technically a sixth season without watching the first 5 seasons? And we figured with the amount of time we have until Deadpool comes out and the amount of trivia we have to get out in the next few months, it actually works out perfectly where if we watch the next five, we watch the first 5 seasons of X-Men, we'll eventually catch up to where when the new season, X-Men 97, is ending, we'll be able to kind of review that as a whole. So instead of going weekly, recapping these X-Men episodes with no context of the first 5 seasons, even though we kind of know the X-Men because we watched the movies, we figured we go back and actually watch the series because they're short episodes. So we're going to watch a season every few weeks. Next week, we will be reviewing season 1 of the X-Men animated series, which you can find on Disney Plus. It's 13 episodes each, are like 20 minutes long. So it should take no more than like 3.5 hours, which is like the same as if we were to watch 2 movies. So, it's a short commitment. So if you have never seen it, or if you're rewatching it for the new series, or if you've seen it so many times you can just recite it off the cuff, come watch us and offer your insight, because I want to hear from like people who grew up watching the series as well. I'm sure like Matt Chapman's out there, he knows. But like, people who grew up watching the series, I want to hear in the comments like what your thoughts are, and like if they hold up, if you revisited them recently, and like let us know if we're right or wrong. I'm very excited to kind of embark on this journey. We haven't covered a lot of animated stuff aside from the Spider-Verse movies, so it'll be pretty fun. Given that those are the most accurate to the comics, because you can get the closest look to the comics, which is going to be fun. Kelsey, any thoughts as we head into our X March?
No,
Or I guess X March,
I'm
April,
really
May.
excited. I've never seen like one of the animated like cartoon superhero shows ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
And
excited
this
for
is
this to be
regarded
my
as
introduction.
Yeah, so Batman the Animated Series is regarded as the best one, but the X-Men animated series is like the next best one apparently. Like that's like the staple for Marvel television, basically, before they started doing like live action. So yeah, I'm excited for that, and I'm looking forward to it. Kelsey, where can they find you? Let me make your name normal so people can see
I
you.
was gonna say, Dale, I'm like, are you sure these are our names, or are we like swearing at our audience
No,
in
I
Japanese?
translated it on Google Translate for
Okay.
you know, so we're good.
um Great. You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick on there, or you can find me on TikTok at Kelsey A. Kilp. And then my letterbox is the exact same thing at Kelsey A. Kilp.
Cool. You can find me at Dylan_Randazzo Twitter, TikTok Dylan Randazzo 417, and then the Dill Pickle Movie Network on YouTube as you're watching it here. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week for X-Men the Animated Series Season 1. And if you're watching the new series, let us know how it is as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.